Yep, and then let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down page just a little bit. I want to talk about some key numbers before we start doing some deep dives. Now, when you first go to the page, it's going to give you the national level information, which is a consolidated look across the entire country. And the first thing I see here is some really key numbers under the national level. And this is the total number of job openings for cybersecurity jobs in the United States. As of today, the total number of job openings on this site that they're showing is 597,767. So just shy of 600,000 jobs for nice, easy math for those of us who are on the podcast audio only. Now, if you look at the total number of employed cybersecurity professionals in the workforce, it's just over 1 million people. It's 1,053,468 to be exact. So what does that tell me? That tells me there are a lot of job openings and there's not really that many people. If we're looking at an industry where you have almost 50 or 60% of the workforce having those jobs available as well, that's a pretty high number. As you look to the next column, you're going to see the supply and demand ratio. Right now, the national average is 68%. This is the supply-demand quotient. What this means is that there are a lot more jobs than there are people. In fact, if I took everybody who is fully qualified for the position and hired them today, we would still have 3 jobs out of every 10 jobs going unfilled, because 32% of the jobs we just don't have people for. And this is what we're talking about, the cybersecurity skills gap. Now, I know this brings up the question, hey, I've got my cert, I've got my degree, I've got whatever, nobody will give me a chance, nobody will hire me, right? But that is one of the problems that we see inside of this industry, is that hiring managers and what they're looking at and what they think makes somebody fully and best qualified is not lining up with what they're seeing as the supply. Now, that could be because of location, it could be because of salary expectations, it could be because of certification levels they're asking. Sometimes I see people asking for an entry-level job and they want 5 years experience and a CISSP. It's not really entry level at that point, right? And so you got to keep those things in mind as well. Kip, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, this just goes back to a previous episode that we recorded about how entry-level jobs are not really entry-level, right? There's this common interpretation of what entry-level means, which is like, McDonald's, right? I can come in off the street, or Uncle Sam will take you off the street and will train you up, then you have skills. That's what most people, think of when they hear the term entry-level, but cybersecurity isn't like that. An entry-level job in cybersecurity is typically going to require some experience in a previous job, and the CyberSeek website shows that graphically in the career pathways section. And by the way, another thing to note is that in this part of the website that we're on, they are in those numbers that you were telling them, Jason. Those numbers include jobs such as systems administrator that have heavy cybersecurity job responsibilities, such as setting permissions on file shares or allocating user groups or users into groups, right, in order to grant access to resources. And so, we talk about the idea of a two-step transition into cybersecurity for people who are outside the industry. And that's actually encapsulated really well in here. The whole website really takes that into account.
Yeah, most definitely. And then as we continue moving over on this dashboard, I want to point out that everything is clickable. So as you click on things, as you move your cursor around, it's highly interactive for your specific case. So I do recommend spend some time on this website and click around and play with it as well. The next column we're going to see here is called Geographic Concentration. And this is one of the ones I think is really, really important. I said earlier that the total number of jobs being really high in Texas really doesn't matter to me if there's a bunch of people in Texas that already can fill those jobs. But instead, this geographic concentration is going to tell you what that supply-demand ratio looks like in a particular area. Now, the national average is 1. Now, what does that mean? Does it mean we have the right number of people? No. It means if we look across all states, we have to have a baseline somewhere of what is the mean, what is the average for everybody. And that's what we're looking at there with that 1. But if I take my mouse and I start putting it and hovering it over, you'll see all of those locations actually listed going from the left side to the right side. Oh, actually, I'm still on the metro area. So let me go back and click on states here. I'm sorry about that. And when you go back to there, now I can see that the national average is on the far left side of this chart. And going anything lower than the national average means there is less jobs for the amount of people that are there. And then if we go to the right side of the chart, we're going to see that there are more jobs for those people. So if you want to know really quick, where is the worst place to look for a cybersecurity job? Well, just put your cursor on the left side, and you will see that right now it says, it looks like it is Arkansas. Arkansas has a 0.8 quotient out of 1, which means they are 80%, which is about 20% lower than the national average. Now, if we go over to the far right and see who is the highest place in terms of jobs versus supply, or the amount of jobs for the amount of supply, who is the most in demand area, it is by far Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has a quotient of 8.2 out of 1. So they are really, really needing people in Washington, D.C. Now, the weird thing is I've done a lot of looking at this site over the years, and I was working in the Washington, D.C. area for about 7 years as well. And at the time I was working there, our quotient was usually around 3 to 4. I was really surprised today when I loaded up the site and saw it was at 80.2. Now, why is it 3 times higher than it's been historically over the last 2, 3, 4 years? Kip, do you have any guesses?
Since it's Washington, D.C., I'm going to guess that it's related to federal government spending. And so my guess is that there's a lot more money available to spend on cybersecurity right now.
I think that's probably a good guess. I don't know the right answer, so I'm just making a hypothesis here as well. But I do know that under the current president, there was a big fight whether government workers had to get vaccinated. And it got held up that government workers had to be vaccinated. And so did government contractors, right? And so a lot of people who refuse to get the vaccine, they've hit the end of their time and they've been asked to leave.
That's another reason. I think it's a
lot of
confluence
open
of
jobs.
both. Yeah, I think it's a confluence of both because there was a big big spending bill for state and local governments to get cybersecurity grants, and it's a big amount of money. It's like $1 trillion or something, and so I'll bet it's both of those things together.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that a couple of years ago, the DoD asked for a lot of money to do more cyber defense and cyber warfare, and budget timelines on DoD is 3 to 5 years, and we're kind of getting into that 3 to 5 year window. So I think a lot of those jobs are coming in line as well. So I think a confluence of all these things are coming in, but when I look at the next highest place after DC, the next highest place is Virginia at 4.5, which is right in that same DC, Virginia metro area. And you go to the next one, I bet we're going to find, Hawaii, another highly government area, Colorado, Vermont, Rhode Island, and you can keep going through as you look at the different places. So that's a good way to look at things. The other thing that I really like on this chart is you can go over to the right side and it shows you the top cybersecurity job titles. Now, one of the things we always tell people is you have to know what you're aiming at. You have to know what job you want. And if you're not sure yet and you're still doing the investigation, because there are lots of different jobs out there, one of the good things you can do is go here to CyberSeek. And even on this side with the location side, I like to look at the top job titles. And right now I'm looking at it from a national level, and I can see that the most in-demand top job is cybersecurity analyst. And this actually supports what I tell my students all the time. I have people who ask me, should I go for CYSA Plus? Should I go for Pentest Plus? Pentest Plus sounds so cool. It's so sexy. I love the idea of being a hacker and all that stuff, right? The problem is there are 4 to 5 times as many jobs for defenders as there are for attackers. And the numbers here show it, right? We can see on this chart, the top 10 they have is cybersecurity analyst, cybersecurity manager, cybersecurity consultant, software developer, systems engineer, network engineer. Those 3 don't even have cybersecurity in them. Though it's like Kip was talking about earlier, these are jobs that are cybersecurity adjacent. And a lot of times people go into those to get into the field. And then we have penetration and vulnerability tester. And then we have systems administrator and cybersecurity specialist. And so really, people are asking for cybersecurity analysts, lots and lots of people want to fill up SOCs and they need these people. So this is another thing you need to think about is what are the high level jobs that people are asking for and making sure you can then meet towards those needs.